I froze, staring at the screen, heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There, in the middle of a cozy Sunday dinner, was my mother, completely unaware that she was being broadcast live to the internet. A glass of wine in hand, her voice loud and clear, cutting through the air as she spoke about me. Her words were like daggers, each one sharper than the last. Isn't it a shame? My mother's voice dripped with mockery as she addressed my aunts and uncles, all of whom were laughing along, caught in the web of her cruelty. My daughter thinks selling houses makes her successful. She couldn't make it through nursing school. And now look at her, just wandering through life like a failure. I felt the blood drain from my face. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from Lucy, my cousin, appeared on the screen. You need to see this. I'm so sorry. She had attached a link to the live stream. The words stung, but it wasn't just the words themselves. It was the feeling of complete and utter betrayal. The realization that my mother had been mocking me, not just behind my back, but openly, for everyone to hear. I had been away at a real estate conference in Providence, busy working, pushing myself to the brink of exhaustion. Meanwhile, my family had gathered without me. My mother, Eleanor, was there, a constant presence of frustration and criticism in my life. She had been sick for years, and I had taken it all upon myself, nursing her back to health, managing her care, the mounting medical bills, the endless hours of paperwork and phone calls with insurance companies. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought it was what any daughter would do for a mother who had always been there for her. And yet, here she was, laughing and mocking the very sacrifices I had made. I could hear her now, her voice ringing in my ears. Remember when she dropped out of nursing school? Came home crying because the exams were too hard? Pathetic. My throat tightened, my eyes blurred as the tears welled up. The video kept playing, and my mother continued her tirade, oblivious to the fact that every word was being heard by people I trusted. People who should have been on my side. It wasn't just her. The sound of my uncle and aunt chuckling along with her only made it worse. She acts like selling a house every few months makes her successful. My mother sneered. I could feel the words like an anchor around my chest, suffocating me. No one knew the truth. No one knew that I had sacrificed everything for her, my savings, my nursing education, even the few relationships I had tried to maintain. All of it was put on hold because I believed that if I didn't step up, no one else would. And yet, she called me a failure. To them, I was nothing more than a woman who couldn't hack it, and was now stumbling through life. A sharp laugh escaped my mother as she reached for her wine. The same wine I had bought for family dinners. The same wine I had shared with her for years. The laughter of my relatives filled the air as my heart shattered. Some people just aren't cut out for real achievement. She finished, raising her glass as if toasting to the mockery she had just made of me. I felt my stomach churn. The anger, the betrayal, the hurt, it all hit me like a tidal wave. I had been living my life for her, fighting for her health, her well-being, sacrificing my own happiness, and in return, she had nothing but disdain for me. Another buzz from my phone broke me from my thoughts. Another text from Lucy. I didn't realize what she was saying until it was too late. I'm so sorry. Do you want me to take the video down? I stared at the message. Numb. Part of me wanted to say yes. To make it disappear. To erase this awful moment. But then I thought of everything I had done for her. For this family. No. It needed to stay. Leave it up. I typed back, my fingers shaking as I pressed send. I need to show you something tomorrow when I get back. I sank back into the chair, my heart heavy with the weight of the truth. My entire life, it seemed, had been a lie. I wasn't the daughter she needed. I was just the one she could use. The one she could belittle. And now, I had proof. Proof that she would never change. No matter how hard I tried. The tears fell freely now. Not just for what I had lost, but for what I had given up. All the while believing that my love and devotion would matter. But it didn't. To her, it was never enough. As I sat there, the weight of the video still hanging over me, I couldn't help but replay the words in my head. Over and over again, my mother's voice echoed through my mind. She just sells houses to people who actually succeeded in life. Each time the words repeated. The pain deepened. What had I been doing all these years? I had built my entire life around her, pushing my own dreams to the side, putting my career on pause, and giving up everything I'd worked for just to make sure she didn't have to face this illness alone. 5 years. That's how long I had spent shouldering the weight of her medical bills. The never-ending paperwork, the insurance battles, the physical and emotional toll of driving her to doctor's appointments, all while keeping my own business running. I had emptied my savings account last year to pay for a specialized treatment her insurance wouldn't cover, hoping somehow that it would give her the relief she needed. And this was how she saw me? This was how she appreciated it? As a failure? The harsh reality hit me again. And this time, I couldn't push it aside. I had convinced myself for so long that the sacrifices I made were temporary, that one day I'd return to my nursing studies. I'd go back to the career I always dreamed of, the one that would truly allow me to help people. But each time I thought about picking up where I left off, the same thoughts came rushing in. Could I really leave her? Could I go back to school knowing she still needed me? But was that really my life to live? I had been lying to myself, telling myself that the unrelenting criticism and lack of gratitude was just part of the deal. That it was her pain talking, or her old school way of motivating me. But no, watching that video, seeing her laugh and mock me so openly, it was clear. This wasn't just about her illness. This was about her not seeing me as anything more than a tool for her own convenience. A way to continue living in her comfort zone while I gave up mine. As the tears slowly dried, I made a decision. I wasn't going to keep doing this. I was done. I had sacrificed everything. And for what? A mother who thought I wasn't good enough. I had to take back control of my life. No matter how hard it seemed. I could not let this be my future. And that's when I realized something crucial. I could go back to nursing. I had the opportunity to rebuild my life, to finally pursue the career I had set aside for her. But it wasn't going to be easy. I would have to make some difficult choices. And the hardest part was knowing that those choices would upset her. But it was the only way forward. Before I share what happened next, the moment that left an entire room of journalists in stunned silence, I want to connect with you. My amazing viewers, where are you watching from? Drop your country's flag in the comments below. And if you've ever had to fight for something you believe in, hit that like button, because this story is just getting started. The decision hit me like a surge of adrenaline, sharp and sudden, cutting through the haze of confusion. For years, I had been living in the shadow of my mother's expectations, constantly trying to prove myself, trying to be the daughter she wanted me to be. But in that moment, as I sat alone in my hotel room, staring at the dimly lit screen of my phone, I knew I had to stop. I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for someone who would never see my worth. I felt something shift inside me, a weight lifting, a clarity I hadn't known I needed. It was like waking up from a long, suffocating dream, and suddenly, I could breathe. My dreams, my life, they were my own, and I wasn't going to let anyone, least of all my mother, hold me back anymore. The next morning, I gathered the scattered pieces of my resolve, taking one small step after another. I opened my laptop, pulled up my financial records, and started reviewing everything, every payment I had made for her treatments, every insurance battle I had fought, every sacrifice that had been buried under the guise of duty and love. It was all right there in front of me, and for the first time in years, I saw it clearly, not as something I owed her, but as something I had given freely. And now, it was time to stop giving. I had always told myself I couldn't leave her, that she needed me too much. But as I looked at the documents, I realized the truth. I had been the one needing her approval, needing her validation. But what good had it done me? It hadn't made me feel loved or valued, it had only made me feel small, insignificant, and like I was nothing more than a caretaker, a tool for her to lean on when it suited her. I opened the folder titled, Mom's Medical, filled with receipts, insurance claims, and statements. Each page was a reminder of my sacrifices I had been too afraid to acknowledge until now. It wasn't just about money. It was my time, my energy, my life that had been drained away. And yet, she mocked me. She mocked the very life I had built to support her. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't let myself be her safety net while she dismissed everything I did. I had to take my life back. And that meant cutting ties, cutting the financial ties, cutting the emotional ties. I had to let go of the idea that I could make her see me. Make her love me the way I had always wanted. Because no matter how much I gave, it was never going to be enough for her. It was time to stop waiting for a validation I would never receive. I closed my laptop and took a deep breath. A sense of peace beginning to wash over me. It wasn't going to be easy. I knew there would be guilt. There would be fallout. But for the first time in years, I felt something else. Strength. I was finally standing up for myself. For my own future. And that was worth everything. As I stood up and grabbed my phone, I felt the weight of the decision settle into place. I had already started setting aside a small amount of money each month, hoping to one day return to nursing school. Now, I wasn't just hoping, I was making it happen. I texted Lucy. I'm going to do it. I'm taking control. I had made my choice. And nothing was going to stop me now. I stepped into the house, heart pounding in my chest. Eleanor was sitting at the kitchen table, wine glass in hand, her usual air of entitlement surrounding her. She looked up when I entered, eyes narrowing. What's this about, Sophie? I thought you were in Providence? I didn't answer right away. I walked over, set the folder on the table, and opened it slowly, laying out the evidence of the last 5 years, medical bills, insurance papers, receipts. I've been paying for everything, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. Your treatments, your medications, all while putting my own life on hold. And for what? Her face twisted in disbelief. What are you talking about? You don't see it, do you? I've sacrificed everything. Eleanor, my dreams, my career, my time. I've done this for you. And you've mocked me. You've belittled everything I've done. She tried to defend herself. But I was done listening. I'm not walking away from you. But I'm walking away from this. From the way you treat me. I've given everything I could. And it's time for me to live for myself. Her expression faltered. A brief flicker of panic. Then anger. You can't do this. I already have, I said, feeling the weight lift from my chest. I'm going back to school. And I'm going to become the nurse I've always wanted to be. I turned and walked out. The weight of her words falling behind me. For the first time, I felt free. The days that followed felt like a blur. But they were also the clearest I'd felt in years. The weight of my decision was still heavy. But the sense of relief was undeniable. I had finally chosen myself. I wasn't the daughter who always said yes. I wasn't the one who put her life on hold for someone else's approval. I was Sophie Lancaster, and I was finally ready to live for me. I spent the next few days entangling the mess of my life, one decision at a time. The first was cutting financial ties. I took my name off all of Eleanor's medical accounts, transferred my savings into my own account, and blocked her number. Every action was deliberate, and each step felt like taking back a small piece of myself. The calls, the messages, the endless requests, none of it mattered anymore. She would have to find another way to manage, just as I had to find a way to move forward without her constant interference. When I went to the bank to finalize the changes, the reality hit me. There was no turning back now. But for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel the familiar pang of responsibility tugging at me. I felt free, like I was finally unshackling myself from a life I had never truly wanted. The next step was practical, figuring out how to make my new life work. I had already started the process of reapplying for nursing school. I hadn't told Eleanor yet. I wasn't sure when or how I would. But the decision had been made. And nothing was going to stop me from pursuing what I had put aside for so long. I took a deep breath and looked at the application form in front of me, realizing this was the moment I had been waiting for. It wasn't a dream anymore, it was a plan. That night, as I sat at my kitchen table, my phone buzzed. It was from Lucy. I'm so proud of you, Sophie. You're doing what you need to do. Her message was a small but meaningful validation. A reminder that I wasn't completely alone in this. The last few years had been so isolating. But Lucy was a reminder that there were still people who understood, who supported me. I sent her a quick reply before turning my attention back to the paperwork in front of me. Everything was falling into place. Piece by piece. I wasn't just stepping away from my mother's expectations. I was stepping toward a future I had almost forgotten was possible. It felt strange, like stepping into a new version of myself. The girl who had always done what was expected, who lived in the shadows of other people's needs, she was gone. In her place stood a woman who knew what she wanted, who was ready to fight for it. It was the first time I had truly felt in control of my own life. As I finished filling out the application, I looked out the window at the city skyline. I wasn't sure what the future held. But for the first time, I didn't fear it. I was ready to face whatever came next. The days after I made my decision were a whirlwind, but they felt like the most purposeful days of my life. I had set things in motion, removed myself from Eleanor's world, refocused my energy on building my own. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Every phone call, every meeting, every small victory felt like a building block in the foundation of a future that was entirely mine. It was strange, though, how much space I had left in my life now that I wasn't constantly juggling Eleanor's needs. At first, I filled the silence with endless work, diving headfirst into my real estate business, taking on more clients, handling everything with a meticulous focus. But even in the midst of the busy days, something was different. For the first time in years, I didn't feel drained. I wasn't living for someone else anymore. I was living for me. The phone calls from my family started coming in. At first, it was the usual barrage of guilt, of confusion. Why aren't you helping your mother? She's so sick. Sophie, you can't just leave her. But I didn't answer. I couldn't. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I had been the one holding everything together for so long. And now it was their turn. Let them see what it felt like to be responsible for someone who would never appreciate it. I wasn't their safety net anymore. Then, one evening, the phone rang. It was Lucy again, and this time, her voice was different. Sophie, she said quietly, I need to tell you something. I braced myself, wondering if it was more bad news. Another one of those family crises that I couldn't handle anymore. But what she said next caught me completely off guard. I spoke to Aunt Maureen today. Lucy continued. She told me she finally understood why you had to do what you did. She was angry at first, but she said she hadn't seen it from your perspective before. She said she was proud of you, Sophie, for standing up for yourself. My heart skipped a beat. Maureen? The same aunt who had sided with Eleanor all these years? The one who had never understood the weight I carried? It felt like a small but significant shift in the tides. She's proud of me? I repeated, disbelief still in my voice. Yes, Lucy said, her voice warmer now. She's proud of you. And so am I. You're doing the right thing. Sophie, don't ever doubt it. A lump formed in my throat. It wasn't much, but it was enough. It was the kind of validation I hadn't expected. And certainly not from my family. But in that moment, I realized that I didn't need their approval anymore. I had found my own strength. And that was more than enough. The next few weeks passed in a blur of paperwork, meetings, and late-night study sessions as I prepared to re-enter nursing school. I had told myself I wasn't going to return to school unless I was sure. Unless I was ready. And now, I was. But there was still that lingering sense of doubt. That voice in the back of my mind that wondered if I was making the right choice. It didn't go away. Not entirely. But when I walked into the admissions office at Boston City Nursing School, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, certainty. As I sat across from the advisor, she reviewed my file, nodding. You've been away from the program for quite some time. But your academic record is strong. I think you'll do just fine. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. Not because someone told me I was, but because I knew it deep down in my bones. I left the office with the acceptance letter in hand, a symbol of everything I had fought for, the courage to choose myself, the strength to walk away from everything that had held me back, and the hope for a future that was entirely mine. Breaking free wasn't easy. It still isn't. But each step I take forward feels like another layer of the weightlifting. I'm no longer the person who hides behind obligation. I am Sophie Lancaster, and I'm finally living life on my own terms. And for the first time in a long time, that feels like enough. I knew it was only a matter of time before she would come looking for me. The silence between us had lasted too long. And I had no illusions that it would stay this way. She had always been able to find a way to break through my walls. To manipulate me when she needed to. But this time, I wasn't the same person she had always known. I had broken free, and there was no going back. It happened one afternoon, just as I was finishing up a showing for a client. I spotted her car in the parking lot. And my heart sank. I didn't want to deal with this. Not now. Not when everything was finally starting to feel right. But as I stepped out of the car, I saw her, Eleanor, standing by the side of her car. Her arms crossed, her expression a mixture of frustration and determination. "Hey," I said, trying to sound calm as I approached. My voice betraying nothing of the storm raging inside me. She looked at me for a long moment before speaking. Her voice tight with anger. "We need to talk," she said. There was a strange sweetness in her tone. The kind she only used when she knew how to get under my skin. "What's there to talk about?" I asked, keeping my distance, trying to remain composed. "You've said everything you needed to say." Her eyes flashed. "You think you can just walk away from everything? From me? After all I've done for you?" I could feel the familiar pang of guilt start to creep in. But I pushed it away. I wouldn't let her manipulate me this time. "You didn't do anything for me, Eleanor. You've never seen me for who I am. Only as someone who's supposed to be at your beck and call. I'm done with that." Her face twisted with disbelief. Her hands trembling as she reached out toward me. "You think you're so much better than me now? After everything I've done for you? This is how you repay me?" I shook my head. "I'm not repaying you, Eleanor. I'm just finally living for myself. I'm not responsible for your happiness anymore. I've carried this weight for far too long. And I'm done. You don't get to control me anymore." Her lips parted, but no words came out. The anger in her eyes was replaced by something else, something darker. More desperate. "You're throwing everything away, Sophie. I'm your mother. I need you." I looked her straight in the eye. "You've never needed me the way I needed you. You needed someone to take care of you. Someone to make your life easier. But you never asked what I needed. You never cared about my dreams. My future. It was always about what you wanted." For a moment, she just stood there, her face pale, as if the words had finally broken through. But then, just as quickly, the walls went back up. "You're being selfish," she spat. "You're making a mistake." I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. But this time, it wasn't fear, it was anger. Finally rising to the surface after years of being buried under obligation and guilt. "No, Eleanor," I said, my voice steady, unwavering. "I'm not being selfish. I'm finally being honest. And I'm done letting you make me feel like I owe you something." She took a step back, eyes narrowing. "So, what now? You're just going to walk away and forget about me?" I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. But I didn't let it escape. "I'm not forgetting about you. I'm just finally letting go. I can't keep living in this cycle. Pretending that everything is fine when I'm drowning in guilt. I'm choosing my future. And if that means stepping away from you, then so be it." Her face twisted in fury. "You're throwing away your family. You'll regret this. You'll see." I stood my ground, not letting her words pierce me like they once did. "Maybe I will regret it someday. But I won't regret choosing myself. For once, I'm doing what's right for me." She shook her head, muttering under her breath as she turned and walked away. I stood there, watching her go, my chest tight but my heart strangely light. I had said it. I had finally spoken the truth that had been eating away at me for so long. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. As I turned to leave, I felt something inside me click into place. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment I had finally broken free. And there was no going back. The days that followed felt like a slow unraveling of the life I had known. But in the best way possible. Every morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity. A feeling that I was finally on the path I was meant to be on. The weight that had clung to me for so long was gone. Replaced by a quiet sense of peace that came from knowing I had made the right choice. It wasn't easy, but it was mine. I had begun nursing school again. A dream I had shelved for so many years. And now it was within reach. The first day felt surreal. Like I had been given a second chance to start over. To be the woman I had always hoped I could be. As I sat in the classroom, surrounded by people just as eager and nervous as I was, I felt a spark of excitement deep within me. I was no longer Sophie, the daughter caught in a web of expectations. I was Sophie, the student, the future nurse, the woman who had reclaimed her life. The balance between my real estate business and nursing school wasn't easy. But it was exhilarating. Every day felt like I was juggling two lives. But in a way that was meaningful and fulfilling. For the first time in years, I wasn't overwhelmed, I was motivated. I took on fewer clients, focusing on higher value properties, hiring a part-time assistant to help with the admin work. It wasn't a perfect system, but it worked. And most importantly, I was finally doing it for myself. The first few months were a blur of textbooks, study sessions, and late-night work calls. But there was a rhythm to it now. I wasn't constantly trying to please anyone. I wasn't apologizing for taking time for myself. I had no more guilt. No more feeling like I wasn't enough. I had finally become the person I was always meant to be. And then, the award came. It was a recognition from the real estate industry. One I had never expected but deeply appreciated. The Resilience in Real Estate award was given to me for not only keeping my business thriving through personal challenges but for also pursuing my nursing education while doing so. It was a moment of validation. A confirmation that everything I had fought for was worth it. The ceremony was held at a large ballroom. And when they called my name, I couldn't help but smile. As I walked up to the stage to accept the award, I felt a rush of emotions, pride, relief, and gratitude. I had worked so hard for this. But more than that, I had worked so hard for myself. The applause was overwhelming, but it was the quiet moment of standing there, holding the trophy, that stuck with me the most. This wasn't just about success in real estate, it was about me. Finally taking control of my life. Finally choosing me. After the ceremony, several people came up to congratulate me, asking about my nursing journey. They were genuinely interested, and for the first time, I wasn't ashamed to talk about my decision to go back to school. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't ashamed of the path I had chosen. I was proud of it. That night, after the event was over, I checked my phone. There was a text from Aunt Maureen. I just wanted to say I'm proud of you. You're doing something that takes real courage. Sophie, keep going. It was simple, but it meant everything. She had come to understand, in her own way, what I had done, and she was proud. That was all I had ever needed. A few days later, I received another message, this time from my mother. It was brief, almost too brief. I saw your award on TV. You've come a long way. I hope you know I'm proud of you. I stared at the message for a long time, unsure of how to feel. Part of me wanted to be angry, to tell her how much she had hurt me, how much time I had wasted trying to gain her approval. But then I realized, it didn't matter. I had already made peace with my decision. I didn't need her validation anymore. I had learned to validate myself. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a new rhythm. I continued to excel in my studies. My real estate business found a new balance. And I even found time to reconnect with old friends. I was finally building the life I had always wanted, not the one I thought I had to live. And so, as I sat at my desk one evening, reviewing patient care plans and checking emails for upcoming showings, I couldn't help but smile. I was exactly where I needed to be. A nurse in the making. A successful businesswoman. And, most importantly, a woman who had finally learned to put herself first. This was my new beginning. Finally, I felt like everything happened for a reason. And I was living the life I was always meant to. But my story is just one of many stories about challenges and the journey of rediscovering oneself. If you found my story inspiring, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to catch more inspiring stories coming your way. Feel free to share your own journey in the comments below. I would love to hear about the decisions you've made in your life. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.